Begin by making a new substance graph using the metallic roughness option. Give the project a name and set the texture map size. Leave the output format as relative to parent. This makes it easy to change the size of individual texture maps. Use the spacebar to add a base material node. Double-click on the base material node to see it in the 2D view. Under the instance parameters, change the material preset to dielectric to make sure you don't end up with a metallic-looking material. Under the user-defined maps, activate the normal and height input. For the wood planks, use the space bar to add a normal mode, connecting it to the normal input of the base material. Use the space bar and add a brick generator. Connect the brick generator to the normal and to the height input of the base material. Right-click on the base material node and select View in 3D View. To be able to view the height map, go to Materials, Default, Edit. In the Explorer, you can scale up the height. Double-click on the brick generator to view it in the 2D view. In the Explorer, under the instance parameters, change the x-axis to 1 and the y-axis to around 8. This will give us longer and wider planks. You can also decrease the bevel amounts on the x and y-axis to remove the harsh bevels of the brick generator. Under the height, change the min to somewhere around 0.95 to add some variation in the height of the individual planks. You can also make adjustments to the variation parameter to give you more randomness for the planks. Select the connection between the brick generator and the height input. Use the spacebar to add a slope blur grayscale node to add some deformation to the planks. Add a Gaussian noise node and plug it into the slope of the slope blur grayscale node. Double-click on the slope blur grayscale node to select it. In the Explorer, under the instance parameters, increase the samples and decrease the intensity. And change the mode to min. You can also select the Gaussian noise node and under the instant parameters, decrease the scale to make the noise larger. Select the connection between the Gaussian noise and the slope blur grayscale and add a directional warp node. This will randomize the deformation a bit more. Plug the Gaussian noise into both inputs of the directional warp. Select the directional warp and under the specific parameters, increase the intensity and adjust the warp angle. Box select these four nodes and use your right mouse button to add a frame. This means you can quickly see what this node combination is controlling. To add the wood grain, add a directional noise 1 node. Add a directional warp and connect the directional noise to the input. Add a Gaussian noise and connect it to the intensity input of the directional warp. This will help to further warp the directional noise. With the directional warp node selected, under the specific parameters, decrease the intensity and the warp angle. Select the Gaussian noise node and under the instance parameters, decrease the scale. Add a second normal map node and connect the directional warp. Add a normal combine node and connect the second normal map node to the normal 2 input and the original normal map to the normal 1 input. This will combine the two normal maps. Select the normal combine node and under the instance parameters, change the technique to detail oriented. This will give us a high quality normal map. Connect the normal combine node into the normal input of the base material node. You can now make changes to the nodes to adjust the wood grain. I'll select the normal map for the wood grain and under the specific parameters decrease the intensity. I'll also change the intensity of the directional warp. Box select these four nodes and use your right mouse button to add a frame. To add some more detail to the wood grain, add a gradient linear 2 node. Under the instance parameters, increase the tiling to 16. Add a warp node and connect the gradient 2 linear node. Add a Gaussian noise and connect it to the gradient input of the gradient 2 linear node. Select the warp node and under the specific parameters, adjust the intensity. Select the Gaussian noise node and under the instance parameters, decrease the scale. Continue to adjust the warp node. This will give us some wood grain that has more details. Add a directional warp node and connect the warp node to the input. Add a directional noise 2 node and connect it to the intensity input of the directional warp node. Add a third normal map node and connect the directional warp. Decrease the intensity of the normal map node under the specific parameters. Add a second normal combine node and connect the wood grain details normal map to the normal 2 input. Connect the first normal combine node to the normal 1 input. Connect this new normal combine node to the normal input of the base material node. Select the connection between the directional warp and the wood grain details normal map node and add another directional warp node. Connect the slope blur grayscale from the planks to the intensity input of the second directional warp node. This will help break up the pattern of the wood grain details so it won't look so uniform. You can continue to change the directional warp under the specific parameters. Box select these nodes and use your right mouse button to add a frame. Now delete the base material node. Connect the last normal combine node to the normal input. Connect the brick pattern node to the height output. Select the connection for the height output and add a histogram range node. Under the instance parameters, increase the range and position options. If you right-click anywhere on a blank area of the grid, you can view outputs in 3D view. Connect the histogram range to the ambient occlusion output. Select the connection between the histogram range and the AO output and add an ambient occlusion HBAO node. If you right-click anywhere on a blank area of the grid, you can view outputs in 3D, and this will update the view. If needed, change the intensity of the slope blur grayscale, as well as the range and position of the histogram range. Select the AO node and change the height, depth, and radius under the instance parameters. You can also turn on GPU optimization to lower the draw call time. Since the metallic map will be completely black, you can save some resources by changing the output size of the base parameters. Select the Uniform Color node. Under the base parameters, change the output size to absolute, and then decrease the width and height to something like 32 by 32 or 16 by 16. This will save space and draw calls in a game engine. If you need a larger texture for a smoothing map, and this is especially important for Unity users, select the connection between the uniform color and metallic map and add a levels node. Under the output size, change the levels node output size to relative to parent. Add a curvature smooth node and connect the normal combine node. This will use the normal map to give us information about where light would hit the wood grain. Connect the curvature smooth node to the roughness output. Select the connection between the curvature smooth and roughness output and add a levels node. Under the specific parameters, invert the color stops of the levels histogram. This means the rougher areas will be between the planks. Now you can make adjustments to the levels histogram. Add a gradient map node and connect the wood grain. Connect the gradient map node to the base color node. Select the gradient map node and under the specific parameters options, click on Gradient Editor. Click on the gradient at the top of the gradient editor. Select the white color stop and change the color. You can also add more color stops to vary the gradient. Select the connection between the gradient map node and the base color output and add a blend node, connecting to the background input. Add a second gradient map node and connect the second directional warp node from the wood grain details to the second gradient map node. Select the second gradient map node and under the specific parameters options, click on Gradient Editor. Click on the gradient at the top of the gradient editor. Select the white color stop and change the color. You can also add more color stops to vary the gradient. Connect the second gradient map node to the foreground input of the blend node. Select the blend node and under the specific parameters, change the blending mode to Add Linear Dodge. You can also adjust the opacity. Add a curvature Sobel node and connect the last normal combine node. Under the instant parameters, increase the intensity. Add a gradient map node and connect the curvature Sobel node. Select the connection between the blend and base color and add a second blend. Connect the gradient map node to the foreground of the second blend node. Select the gradient map node and under the specific parameters, activate the gradient editor. Click on the gradient and move the black color stop to the right and move the white color stop slightly to the left. Add a slope blur node between the gradient map and the blend nodes. Add a fractal sum base node and connect it to the slope input of the slope blur node. This will break up the uniformity of the gradient map node. Select the slope blur node, and under the instance parameters, increase the samples and decrease the intensity. Select the fractal sum base, and under the instance parameters, change the roughness option. Select the gradient map node and use the gradient editor to give the color stop some color. Select the blend node, and under the specific parameters, change the blending mode to screen. In order to export this material, select the output nodes. Under the Tools menu, select Export Outputs. This will make the materials available for use in external programs. If you want to use this material in Substance Painter, select the package and click on the Publish button. From here, you have the option to either publish the file. This will give you a prompt to save the file. Then you can drag the file into your shelf in Substance Painter. You also have the option to send the material directly to Substance Painter. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you enjoyed this video about making a wood plank material in Substance Designer, then you're probably interested in 3D modeling or texture art. So if you're interested in those topics, you may enjoy this video. Have a good day.